So let's take a quick look at how Google App Engine works. Conveniently, and one of the reasons I like it, is Google App Engine comes with a very simple way for running a testing environment on your own local computer. And whether you're on Mac or PC, you can download their SDK, their software development kit, which includes this testing harness. On Mac, or it's just called Google App Engine Launcher. I'm just going to run it right here, Google App Engine Launcher. Okay, and this lets us run our apps locally on our own computer for development, and then after we are happy with it, we can deploy it, we can upload it to a server. Let's go ahead and make a new application. I'm going to put it in my temp directory because I'm not going to keep this. I don't care too much about it. All right, and I'll give it a name. It asks for actually an application ID. Right now I'll just call it test. Okay, the other defaults we can leave alone. It's going to use Python 2.7. It's going to run on port 8080. Notice it's not running on port 80, the standard web server default. And there's actually administrative support if you open up port 8000. Go ahead and create that. It actually created a few files for us, and we can see those files in PyCharm. Let's just open the directory that we just created with this. So in the temp directory, here's test. We just made it, and we will see a few files that Google App Engine created when we made a new project. Let's open up this project. There's a few files. The one I want to start with is main.py. It's mostly comment, and what we see here is stuff that you can now understand. We import a package called webapp2, and this is basically going to be the Python software for letting us write our own server code that's going to respond to requests. We're going to define a new class called main_handler, and it inherits from webapp2.requestHandler. So requestHandler is a class defined in the webapp2 package, and this is a class that defines a web request handler. We can define a get method, and this get method is going to allow us to respond to those get requests you saw me use before in HTTP. We are writing a very simple request handler that is going to call the write method in self.response, which is defined in the superclass. And now instead of writing hello world, let's write something for this class. I'm just going to write some, this is actually code that's going to execute when this get method happens. But what we'll say is, this is my first server program. All right, and then there's this other little bit of stuff which we don't need to worry about now too much, but let me just show you very briefly what this is saying. This is mapping URLs to code. So when the user asks for the page @ in other words, just like ask for nothing, just like the home page, it's going to execute this code, main_handler. Well, it's going to load this class main_handler and then execute whatever code corresponds to the request. So here's the class, and if we do a get command, it will execute the method and return this. All right, so we've got the bulk of this simple program here. Let's go back to Google App Engine Launcher and run it. It takes a second the first time you run it. It's going to compile it, start the server. This is now green. Our program is running. Well, what does it mean that it's running? It's not actually executing any code. It's just sitting there waiting on ports 8000 and ports 8080, waiting for web requests. So let's go ahead and test this. It is running on port 8080, so we'll go to our web browser, open up a page, and the way that we're going to test it is ask for a special URL called localhost. Localhost is a URL that means the server running on this computer. And when you're using the Google App Engine test server, that's how you have to access it. We have to access port 8080, right? Not port 80, not the regular web browser. In fact, we could look at port 80, and that would show, or we had looked at this file before until they're better than test. But if we ask for port 8080, we're going to get a different server. Now we're getting the Google App Engine server, and we get, look at this. This is my first server program. It works. And we can actually go back and change our code, right? This is my first server program. Cool, right? We don't have to do anything. Just switch back to make this work. We just switch back to a web browser, refresh the page, and it worked. It took a second because basically the Google App Engine development environment, when the page request came, it went to look in the file system and it saw that the source code had been changed. And so it probably recompiled the source code and then ran it. So that's the first part of Google App Engine running locally. It's pretty cool. Of course, what's going to make writing a server program a lot more interesting is when we're not running it locally, but we're actually running it on a public server so that we can access it from any computer in the world, or all of our friends can access it as well. We can do that pretty easily too. We're going to visit a website called appengine.google.com, and this is Google's control panel for App Engine. You're going to have to create yourself an account for the first time using your Google account. It's fairly straightforward. You can see once you've created an account, you'll get 10 free applications running on App Engine. They're free for a certain amount of usage, and how much usage is well defined, but you have to go into the depths to figure out exactly what that means. And then you can create an application name that will run on their hosting service. I've already created one that I'm going to use called Peterson Test. If you want to create a new one, just go ahead and say create application. Give it a new name. It's going to have to be unique on appspot.com. Give it a title, and you can leave all of the other options at their default values. Okay, so Peterson Test is here. We can now go back to our Python program that we made before, and we're going to have to configure this to use the same application ID that we used, that we created on Google App Engine. So you have to open up this file, app.yaml. And the very first line where it says application, and I had said it was called test because that's what I had called it when I was running it locally, we need to call it exactly what we had called it on the Google App Engine server, which was Pedersen.test. I think, let me just go back and check. Yes, Pedersen.test. Alright, so that's good. That's the only thing we have to change. We can now go to Google App Engine Launcher, stop the program from running locally, and press this button, deploy. It's going to ask for our Google credentials. I've already got mine remembered, but otherwise you'll have to type in your password. Click sign in. It opens up a log, and it's going to upload all of the files into the right directories. It's going to compile it, configure it, do whatever magic it needs to do, and then it's going to wait until the Google App Engine servers are ready, and it tests it. It says it's ready. It exited with exit code 0. 0 means good. So now we can go and open up a new tab and run Pedersen-test, and the hosting service is called AppSpot. So you open it, Pedersen-test.appspot.com, and look at this. This is my first server program. Cool. That's just what we wrote. And in fact, I'll leave this running. You can go ahead and try this too, and it should work. Maybe it will change because I'll have changed it between now when I'm making the video and when you run, when you test it. But this is my code running on Google server, and you can go now and do exactly the same thing. And in fact, that is going to be part of your first homework.